Discourse Now. He's not Mark Small.
He's not, and I am Paul Ogden.
Oh,
I had to stop and think. I should have said you're not Paul Ogden.
I am, no.
All right.
We're coming to you from Broad Ripple. It's on the north side of Indianapolis.
You know, it started out cold, but it looks nice out now. The sun is shining.
It looks nice outside,
It's
Paul.
nice, but that's the way fall is. Very simple.
Well, and also when you look outside, it could be very cold. See, it's science, Paul.
It's almost Halloween. When people come to my door, making threats, demanding property from me.
You're pounding the table
I'm
again
sorry,
next to the microphone.
Again, and threatening me and saying that they're going to play a trick on me if I don't give them stuff. Now, that is extortion. It's not right, Mark?
Short people are coming to his door imploring that he give them food items.
Yes.
And
if I don't, they're going to do something to me or do something to my house, egg my house or something like that.
And you've had your house egged.
I have had my house egged. I had someone threw an egg at my garage door once.
Had nothing to do with Halloween.
I don't remember what time of year it was, but it happens a lot.
We were talking about the presidential debate, the debate between presidential candidates that occurred this past
Yeah,
Wednesday.
I made my point about Benghazi. I think that totally was misrepresented.
Well, but I think no matter how you cut it, he got...
It looked bad, but I think technically he was right, but technically doesn't cut it a lot of times.
No, it doesn't. Then they talked about AK-47s and the availability of assault weapons.
Right.
Okay, so President Obama says, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. Who's going to say they're not now? I mean, unless you're running in a precinct for a lower level political position in which your voters all are comprised of college students who are pacifists.
President Obama signed the bill that made it legal to take guns in the national parks.
Yeah, so he's expanded people's ability to use firearms.
But there's a question regarding, actually, in gun rights people will point out, automatic guns are already illegal. It's the semi-automatic that we talk about.
Yeah, but on a lot of the semi-automatics, all you have to do is put a little adapter in, and all of a sudden your semi-automatic weapon is fully automatic.
I'm sure the adapters are legal.
Well, the adapters are legal. The books that are sold on the internet are legal, and the diagrams are there. It's just that actually putting it together and everything is illegal.
But they both ran away from the issue.
Yeah, because President Obama...
Nobody came out for gun restrictions.
No. President Obama talked about other causes of violence. Okay, then Romney started talking about our schools in the nation and in my state, and he said we had the #1 schools, Massachusetts did, in the United States. He said that twice.
I didn't think that was the response to that question.
No, he brought... These are my notes.
I trust you.
But he said that twice, and Massachusetts schools were not #1 in the nation. They're 27th in the country. They were never #1 in the country when he was in office. And they don't even have the best basketball or football programs.
Well, I don't know how you're ranking them, though. I'm sure you could rank them by various statistics. If one might put them at the top.
None that I read put them at the top, and I wasn't reading just left-leaning journals.
Because, like, you look at SAT scores sometimes, or ACT scores. Trouble is, some states, very few people take the SATs, or take the ACTs.
Yeah, or you look at graduation rates. There were a bunch of different factors, but
I don't know what they looked at.
I think it was just an assertion on his part because we've got the #1 schools in the country. We're #1, but so then Romney started talking about 2-parent homes and Fast and Furious, and
in response to the same question.
Yeah, and it's like
that's way off.
And it's like
Fast and Furious does have to do with guns.
It had to do with guns, but. It was really attenuated from what the original question was. I don't think answered. Then they started talking about outsourcing jobs, and this was another disconnect. This is where Governor Romney said we need to be more attractive to offshore invest. We need to make it more attractive for investment here. We need to attract people from offshore to here, and it's like how many people does that really apply to? As a voter, you aren't really attracted to going offshore to begin with. You don't have the capital.
No. Normally when people are putting stuff offshore, it's to evade taxation.
Yes. Yeah.
Or limit their taxes.
And he started talking about...
And there is a disconnect between Romney and the average voter.
Yes.
And I think there's a disconnect between Obama and the average voter. The trouble is I don't think there's near the disconnect. I don't think someone in Romney's position can exploit that. Neither of them is what I'd call populist.
I agree with you there. I mean, they're both Ivy League graduates,
right.
and so it's Ivy League bachelors, and, well, I think Romney got his bachelor's at Stanford, but that's like, and anyways. Again, Romney mentioned China as a currency manipulator, and then that was where Romney challenged President Obama to look at his pension. And I think that he was talking about Obama's state pension from Illinois and how that would have offshore investments there.
Would he have a state pension from Illinois? He did. He was only in the legislature like 2 years.
That's what I thought, too.
I really don't think he'd have it.
I don't think one that would accrue, although with Illinois, who knows. Overall, I mean, my scoring on the debate was like thunderous. I know you disagree with me.
Well, according to your recount of the issues, I'd almost agree with you that I thought Obama won, but I just didn't think it was that much.
I scored it 23-8. I just didn't see Romney as having. I thought Romney really got caught on a couple of things.
What about the third party candidate? How well did he do? The Libertarian?
He had nothing to say.
Nothing to say.
Yeah, they shut out any other candidates, and
Right.
that's just reinforcement of the two-party system, as Andy Horning said, and we will be partying with Andy Horning when he's sworn in Washington D.C. on January 1st
Right.
in the United States Senate. And so then we come to the question of the polls afterwards.
Well, and I don't think the polls are I think they're starting to trickle in now. I looked at some this morning. Romney had a lead like 1.5 points in the national. There is a real clear politics average of polls where they do an average of all the major polls, the recent major polls. And Romney had moved ahead about 1.5 points on a national basis, and it looks like Obama has moved back in the lead. Of course, that really doesn't mean a whole lot because the election's really decided on a state-by-state basis.
It's based upon the Electoral College.
Right.
And
that's where you get into some really interesting polling. You look at Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, the other states. Ohio is, of course, a huge state.
No, it's a pivotal state. There have been several factors lately that are interesting in those races, one of which is Romney's people have pulled out all their campaign from North Carolina, apparently.
I don't think he's conceding North Carolina.
Not conceding it, but they've pulled out their people and money.
Okay, I've not seen, the polls I've seen have shown him a hand.
Yeah,
a lot of the polls have shown him a hand.
And I think...
I don't know why he'd move out. You say Romney moved out of North Carolina?
Yes.
Right.
I'm not talking about one of his homes.
What?
One of his homes.
Okay, I thought you said something else.
Oh, no, but you also look at Ohio, where the court decision came down that said that the restrictions on voters and voter registration over there were unconstitutional.
What restrictions were there?
Like for early, nothing was running early voting.
Yeah, there was some early voting. They try to make it early voting just available for people in the military, I believe, and of course that really benefits people in the military. Tend to be more conservative. They tend to be more Republican. Republicans would love the election if you decide they're doing in the military.
Well, and I've got a question about that. Is if like this week, Ann Romney said that her in response to questions about her husband having not served in the Vietnam War, and not just not having served in the Vietnam War, he demonstrated in favor of the Vietnam War as a college student in the 1960s.
But from what I've read, early 60s, there were demonstrations on campus trying to get us into Vietnam.
Yeah, but he wasn't in college at that point. He was in college later. I mean, yeah. I mean, and
66 years old.
Yeah, so that means he would have graduated from college like in 67, 68, along in there.
It was, middle 60s. I figured it at some point.
Yeah, so he was coming through. There wouldn't have been demonstrations like he was in unless there were demonstrations against the war.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, like 63. I remember seeing
the very early start of the war. But Ann Romney said that her husband had served the country by going over to France as a Mormon missionary.
Yeah.
And that her five sons.
France is kind of a tough. Well, France is a tough area.
Oh yeah, I mean I'll tell you, you can
French women are good at that.
and start buying some of that wine, and pretty soon you're a socialist. But she said
one of those funny hats.
Yeah, those berets.
Yes.
But she said her husband and her five sons had served the country by doing their missionary work for the Mormon Church in France. And I thought, there are some Vietnam vets who probably would take issue with that. And also, especially when you've got someone who's as hawkish as Romney seems to be for issues on Iran and Israel and the military, and he never has served. Nobody in his family ever served.
Yeah. Right. And we're seeing, of course, candidates now who have never served. We used to, not that long ago, every candidate that came up was had served in the military somehow.
Well, but that's, I think, part of the aura of the Second World War. It's like all the candidates had served.
Right.
And the draft was in effect during that war, and so everybody had to serve.
Yeah, right.
So, going back to the polls, there was the Gallup poll had Romney up by 7.
Yeah, those tracking polls, it just don't seem to be making much sense this year.
University of Connecticut poll showed Obama up by 3.
The Gallup is a tracking poll, so it's supposed to be less accurate overall, but to show the movement because the sample is smaller.
Well, and then there was another national poll like IPP or TBD that showed Obama up by 2, and that was in. Given all that, given those numbers, then one, we're going to see things moving back more towards Obama since he won that
I think
debate.
we will, but in the end, it will be decided by the energy. If Republicans were enthused about Romney, believe it or not, after that first debate, and if some of that enthusiasm has been tempered. Even if a poll is even, if one side is more enthusiastic, they turn out more than the other side. So you could have that tip the balance in a few states where it's really close, like Ohio.
Yeah, but President Obama has a fairly solid lead in Ohio.
It's seen a solid lead when it's like 2, 3, 4 points. That's not.
I've seen 5 and 6. And Pennsylvania, I don't understand why they're putting Pennsylvania in as a toss-up. Where President Obama,
they're about 4 points now, but I have doubts about Pennsylvania. But I think Romney could win the election and lose Ohio now. I did not think that before.
Well, Monday is a foreign policy debate. It's going to be traditional format where they're behind the podiums. President has an advantage by having these, intelligence briefings every morning. Mm-hmm. What do you see it there is happening?
Fact is, people, unless we got a war going on, which
we do.
We arguably do, but it's not a World War II type of war. People don't vote at foreign policy; they simply don't. They vote on their pocketbook.
Okay, well, I'm gonna pick President Obama by 3.5 on Monday.
I'll pick Romney by field goal.
Oh, by field goal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for Civil Discourse Now this week. Come tune in next week when we'll be talking about more matters related to the election. Paul, as always, been a pleasure. Our audience is here. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. We'll be back.